I stood on the precipice, looking down at what was left of my life. He took everything: my home, my job, my reputation, and my best friend. He said I would never recover, especially not while carrying his child. He thought my pregnancy was my greatest weakness. He was wrong. It was the only reason I had left to fight. My name is Ilara Vance. I am 32 years old and 5 months pregnant. The first sign was the light, a small, insidious red light where the familiar green flash should have been. I pressed my security badge against the sensor at Astrodata Solutions again, my palm already damp. Red. Access denied. A heavy hand landed on my shoulder, not a friendly pat, but a grip. Ms. Vance. I turned. 2 men in the stiff gray uniforms of building security stood behind me. Their faces were impassive, identical. You need to come with us, please. My throat tightened. The morning sickness, which had finally eased weeks ago, threatened a sudden acidic return. There must be a mistake. My badge just needs to be reset. Please, Ms. Vance, now. The man's grip didn't loosen. It guided me, forced me away from the turnstiles and toward the executive elevators. The lobby of Astrodata was always a quiet hum of efficiency. That morning, it felt like a tomb. Every head that turned, every pair of eyes that followed my short, humiliating procession, felt like a nail in my coffin. These were people I had worked with for 6 years, people I'd shared project deadlines and baby shower cake with. Today, they just stared, their silence a wall of judgment. They didn't take me to my floor. They took me to the 40th, to the glass-walled conference room reserved for board meetings and quiet executions. Marcus Russo, my boss, was already seated at the head of the long mahogany table. He wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stared at a stack of papers in front of him. Beside him sat a man I'd never seen before, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. His face was sharp, predatory. A lawyer. Ilara, Marcus began, his voice rough. He cleared his throat. Please, sit. The security guards remained standing, flanking the door. I was a prisoner. I lowered my pregnant body carefully into the plush leather chair, my hand instinctively going to the swell of my stomach. Ilara, Marcus said again, pushing the papers toward me. We have a significant problem, a very serious problem. The lawyer spoke. His voice was cold, precise. Ms. Vance, we have definitive proof of a massive data breach originating from your workstation, proprietary algorithms, client lists, our entire beta project. What? The word came out as a squeak. That's impossible. I would never. He tapped a printed log. The files were routed from your IP address to an unsecured offshore server. The last transfer was at 2:03 this morning. I was asleep at 2, I said, my voice shaking. I was in bed. My husband can tell you. The lawyer raised an eyebrow, a flicker of a smile playing on his lips. We're not interested in your alibis, Ms. Vance. We're interested in the facts. This is corporate espionage. Espionage. I looked at Marcus, pleading. Marcus, you know me. You've known me for years. I helped build this department. I would never do this. Marcus finally looked up. His eyes were cold, dead. Astrodata is terminating your employment, effective immediately, for gross misconduct. The air left my lungs. It was a physical blow, knocking the breath from me. The baby gave a sharp, sudden kick, as if reacting to my panic. We have decided, the lawyer continued, not to press criminal charges at this time, contingent on your full cooperation, which means you leave, now. But my things, I stammered. My files. My purse is still in my desk. You will be allowed to retrieve your personal wallet, one of the guards said, stepping forward. He was holding my small leather wallet. They had already been to my desk. That's it, I whispered. That's it, the lawyer confirmed. I was escorted back out, past the silent, judging faces of my colleagues. down the elevator, through the lobby. The two guards walked me all the way to the revolving glass doors and pushed one open, gesturing for me to exit. The bright Denver sunlight hit me, blinding me. The door spun shut behind me. I was on the sidewalk, unemployed, 5 months pregnant, and accused of being a criminal. My hands trembled so violently I could barely unlock my phone. I needed Liam, my husband, my rock. He would fix this. He would know what to do. I called his number. The ringtone cut off after a single beat. Straight to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Liam. Leave a message." He must be in a meeting. Of course. I tried Chloe, my best friend. My sister in everything but blood. She was the godmother. She would be furious on my behalf. I dialed. It rang twice, then clicked. Her voice, but not her voicemail. A pre-recorded message. "The person you are calling is currently in an area with no reception." No reception. She was a real estate agent. She was always in reception. She lived on her phone. A cold dread, sharper than the high-altitude air, began to seep into my bones. Something was wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. I took a cab I couldn't afford back to our penthouse apartment. The ride was a blur of my own panicked reflections in the glass. The driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, probably wondering if I was on drugs or having a breakdown. Maybe I was. I fumbled with my keys at the apartment door. The key slid in. It didn't turn. I tried again, jiggled it. Nothing. I stared at the lock. It was new. A high-security polished brass deadbolt I didn't recognize. "Can I help you?" "Ma'am." A man in a building uniform I didn't recognize was standing by the service elevator. I live here," I said. "My key isn't working. Name: Elara Vance, apartment 3401. His expression was neutral, but his eyes were full of pity. "Ah, you'll need this." He handed me a thick, cream-colored envelope. My name was on the front, but it wasn't Liam's handwriting. It was from a law firm. I tore it open, my fingers ripping the heavy cardstock. Legal documents spilled out. A petition for dissolution of marriage, a motion for an emergency restraining order, citing erratic and threatening behavior. My assets, our joint assets, were frozen. I was barred from the residence. I sank against the wall of the corridor, the expensive wallpaper scratching my cheek. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't process. Fired. Divorced. Homeless. Then the elevator chimed. The doors to the private elevator, the one that opened directly into our apartment, slid open. Liam stepped out. My husband, looking impeccable in his navy suit. His hair was perfect. He was laughing at something, turning to hold the elevator door for the person behind him. Chloe, my best friend, Chloe, stepped out, her hand linked through Liam's arm. She was wearing the silk blouse I had loaned her, the one she said she needed for a big client meeting. They stopped when they saw me. Liam's smile vanished, replaced by a mask of cold annoyance. Chloe looked right at me. She looked at my tear-streaked face, at the legal papers clutched in my hand, at the protective hand on my pregnant belly. She didn't flinch. She didn't show a single trace of remorse or surprise. Her gaze was steady, cold, and triumphant. She tightened her grip on Liam's arm. He patted her hand, then looked at me as if I were something he'd scraped off his shoe. "You were served," he said. His voice was flat. "You're trespassing." He steered Chloe around me, toward the main elevators. They didn't look back. The doors closed, leaving me alone in the hallway, the scent of Chloe's perfume lingering in the air. It wasn't a coincidence. It was a plan. My job, my home, my husband, my friend, all gone, wiped out in less than 3 hours. I don't know how long I stood there. Eventually, the same building employee gently told me I had to leave the premises. I walked. I walked until my feet bled and the baby felt like a lead weight in my pelvis. I had my wallet, which held $84 and some change. As the sun set over the mountains, casting long, cold shadows over the city. I checked into a motel off the highway, the kind with flickering neon signs and sheets that smelled like bleach and despair. I paid cash for one night. I lay on the scratchy comforter, staring at the water-stained ceiling, a 32-year-old pregnant widow of a life that had been murdered that afternoon. The motel room smelled of stale cigarettes and industrial cleaner. A thin, gray blanket was pulled up to my chin, but it offered no warmth, only a scratchy reminder of how far I had fallen. Outside, the highway traffic was a constant roaring rush, a soundtrack to the end of my world. Just this morning, I had a life, a beautiful, perfect life. I closed my eyes, and the damp, musty air of the motel room faded, replaced by the scent of champagne and expensive perfume. It was 6 months ago, at the annual Denver Children's Hospital Gala. I was there with a team from Astrodata, feeling slightly out of place in my rented gown. Then he walked over. Liam. He moved with an effortless confidence, a highball glass in one hand, a smile that disarmed the entire room. He was a rising star financial consultant, he'd said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. He was charming, brilliant. And when I told him what I did, that I built predictive data models, his eyes lit up with genuine interest. He didn't just nod along, he asked sharp, insightful questions. He made me feel like the most fascinating woman in the room. He told me my work at Astrodata was groundbreaking. He made me feel seen. 2 months later, we were married, a whirlwind, just like he was. And Chloe. I squeezed my eyes shut, but I couldn't block her out. Chloe, who I'd met during orientation our freshman year of college. We'd bonded over bad cafeteria food and impossible statistics exams. She was the family I'd chosen, my sister. When I saw the 2 pink lines on the pregnancy test, my hands were shaking too hard to even text Liam a picture. My first call was to Chloe. She was at my apartment in 10 minutes, screaming with joy, a bottle of sparkling cider already in hand. She held me as I cried happy, terrified tears. She was the one who helped me tell Liam. She was the one who started the Pinterest board for the nursery, pinning images of soft gray elephants and handcrafted wooden mobiles. Our life was a beautiful, curated image. Cozy Sunday evenings were our ritual. Liam would be grilling steaks on the penthouse balcony, the Denver skyline glittering below us. Chloe would be over, wine glass in hand, debating baby names with me. We'd argue over whether Atlas was too pretentious or James was too plain. We were a family, happy, secure, all the promises of a future unfolding exactly as it should. A sharp, sudden kick from inside me brought me back to the lumpy motel mattress. The baby. My body was a battleground of stress hormones, and the baby was restless. I turned on my side, my hand resting on the swell, and thought of the only person who would have hated this. My father, my dad, Thomas Vance, was an old-school investigative journalist, the kind who still used spiral-bound notebooks and believed in following the money. He distrusted computers, and he distrusted charming men even more. He died a year ago. A sudden, massive heart attack that the doctors said was just one of those things. He was 60 years old. He had met Liam exactly twice before he died. After the first meeting, a carefully casual dinner, Dad had taken me aside. "He's too polished, Alara," he'd warned, his voice a low rumble. "The perfect ones are the best at hiding. Alara, people with no flaws are either lying or very, very boring. And he is not boring." I'd laughed it off, swatting his arm. "Dad, stop being a reporter. You're being overprotective. He's wonderful. Just be careful," he'd said, his eyes serious. Now, his words echoed in the cheap, dark room, a prophecy I had been too arrogant to hear. The red flags were there, of course. They were always there, fluttering just at the edge of my vision, but I'd chosen to ignore them. Liam's business trips. They were constant, always last minute. A client in Zurich, an emergency audit in Singapore. He was always vague about the details, citing client confidentiality. I, in my supportive modern wife role, had packed his bags and never once questioned the logistics. And Chloe, her advice, always so practical. When I'd worried that Liam seemed distant after a long trip, Chloe would pour me another glass of wine. "Ilara, men need their space," she'd say, her tone one of sisterly exasperation. "He's a high flyer. You can't chain him to the nursery. Don't be so suspicious. It's not a good look." She was the one who encouraged me to focus on my career, to put in the late nights at Astrodata to finish my algorithm. "Show Liam you're a power couple," she'd advised. "He'll respect you more." I sat up, the room spinning. I was so stupid, so blind. A memory, small and dark, pushed its way to the surface. It was a week after Dad's funeral. I was in his study, a place that still smelled of old books and pipe tobacco, trying to sort through his life. His personal laptop was on the desk. He was paranoid about his work, and this laptop, he'd always joked, was his real brain. Liam had come in, bringing me a mug of coffee. He was being so supportive, so strong for me. He set the mug down on the desk, right next to the laptop, and as he turned to hug me, his elbow accidentally knocked the entire full mug of black coffee directly onto the keyboard. He was mortified. "Oh God, Ilara, I'm so sorry. I'm so clumsy." I was devastated. The laptop sputtered, sparked, and died. We took it to a data recovery specialist, but they said the motherboard was fried, drowned. "A total loss," the technician had said. I'd thrown it away. I'd thrown away my father's brain. Liam had held me as I cried, whispering how it was just a machine, how it was okay to let go, how my father's real legacy was me. I thought it was an accident, a clumsy, unfortunate accident in the midst of grief. Lying in the motel room, staring at the peeling paint, a new, cold certainty settled in my stomach. It wasn't an accident. Nothing had been. The thin light of morning, gray and dirty, filtered through the motel room's permanently stained curtains. My body ached, a deep, cellular exhaustion I had never known. But I couldn't rest. I had to know the full scope of the damage. I pulled out my phone, my last connection to the world I used to live in, and connected to the motel's painfully slow, unsecured Wi-Fi. My fingers, still swollen from crying, fumbled with the banking app's login. I typed in the password, ours, the one we'd chosen together, Ilara Liam Forever 2024. The irony was a physical bitter taste in my mouth. The app spun, loaded, and there it was. Our joint checking account $10.31, our joint savings account, the one we were building for the baby's college fund $0.00, wiped out. Drained. The room, which was already small, began to close in. The walls seemed to pulse. A violent wave of nausea, the kind I hadn't felt since the first trimester, surged up my throat. I stumbled to the bathroom, my hand over my mouth, and retched into the stained porcelain bowl, heaving up nothing but bile and terror. My body was in open revolt, rejecting the poison of my new reality. I splashed cold, metallic-tasting water on my face, my reflection a stranger in the cracked mirror, ghostly white, eyes rimmed in red, hair matted. A new email notification pinged. My heart, stupid and hopeful, gave a single leap. Maybe it was Liam. Maybe this was all a monstrous mistake. Maybe he'd been hacked. It was not Liam. It was from Garrison Law PLLC, the lawyer from yesterday. The subject line was Vance v. Vance settlement offer. I opened it, my thumb shaking. The email was brief, cold, and precise. It was not an offer. It was an execution. In exchange for my agreement to a no-fault, uncontested divorce, and my signature on a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement regarding both Liam Vance and Astrodata Solutions, I would be granted one thing, Mr. Vance would graciously agree not to cooperate with the authorities in the inevitable criminal prosecution for my data theft, my settlement, my share of our assets, our home, our life, would be a single lump sum payment of $0. I read it twice, then a third time. They weren't just leaving me, they were erasing me. The job loss wasn't just a convenient way to get rid of me, it was the leverage to silence me. They had orchestrated my entire downfall to make me the criminal, to ensure no one would ever listen to a word I said. My panic turned to a desperate, clawing need for an ally. There had to be someone. I opened my messaging app and started typing. To Sarah, from data imaging, who I'd covered for when her kid was sick. To Ben, my team lead, who I'd helped secure his last promotion. To a dozen other people I'd called colleagues. Friends. Something terrible has happened. I was framed. Liam has left me. I need help. Please, call me. I sent the messages, one after another, into the digital void. I watched my phone for an hour, one by one. The delivered receipts turned to read. No one replied. Not a single person. I was radioactive, a pariah, the disgraced, unhinged, pregnant, thieving ex-employee. They had already chosen their side. A flutter, then a hard kick, right below my ribs. The baby. My baby. This small, innocent life was trapped in this nightmare with me. The panic receded, replaced by a cold, sharp fear that was entirely new. I wasn't just a victim. I was a mother. I had to protect my child. I left the motel, walking 10 blocks to a low-income community health center. The contrast to my old life was a slap in the face. My previous obstetrician's office had valet parking, plush robes, and cucumber-infused water. This was a room with hard plastic chairs, a peeling flyer on the wall about STDs, and a 45-minute wait just to speak to a receptionist. When a nurse finally took my blood pressure, she frowned. "It's high, honey. Really high. You need to calm down. Stress is terrible for the baby." "I know," I whispered, fighting the urge to either laugh or sob. "I'm trying." They couldn't get me in for a full checkup for 2 weeks. I left with a pamphlet on prenatal vitamins and a heart full of lead. Back in the motel room, as the sky turned a bruised purple, I dumped the contents of my wallet onto the scratchy bedspread, the $84 in cash, a few receipts, my now useless Astrodata ID, my driver's license. I did the math. The motel was $30 a night. Cash. I had paid for last night. The $84 would cover I couldn't even think straight. Less than 3 days. I had less than 3 days before I was on the street. I grabbed the wallet. This cheap leather thing Liam had bought me. The only item I'd been allowed to keep. It was all I had left. I clutched it, my knuckles white, and my thumb rubbed against the lining. A nervous, repetitive motion, and I felt it. Something small, something hard, something that shouldn't be there. It was inside the lining, in the small, zippered coin pouch, a tiny lump, no bigger than a grain of rice, sewn into the fabric. My breath hitched. The paranoia that had been simmering all day turned into a roar. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the flimsy motel scissors from the desk drawer and tore at the stitches, ripping the fabric open. A small, black plastic square fell onto the comforter. It had no markings, no brand, just a tiny, metallic contact point on one side. I knew what it was. I had seen them in data security magazines. A micro GPS tracker, tiny, silent, with a battery life of weeks. They hadn't just escorted me out. They hadn't just fired me. They hadn't just divorced me and left me with nothing. They were watching me. They were tracking my every move. They wanted to know exactly where the unhinged, pregnant, thieving wife was. The cold dread from the alleyway, the fear from the bank account, the nausea, it all coalesced into one, blinding, terrifying realization. They weren't done with me. The tracker, small and black, sat on my palm. It felt heavy, a dense, solid piece of malice. My heart was no longer just pounding. It was a trapped bird, slamming itself against the cage of my ribs, desperate to escape. They were watching me. The thought was paralyzing. Then, a second, colder thought followed. If they had bugged my wallet, what about my phone? My phone, my connection to everything, my bank app, my emails, my desperate, unanswered messages to my friends. It was a beacon. I was broadcasting my location, my desperation, my every panicked move, directly to them. My paranoia wasn't paranoia. It was an understatement. I grabbed the phone. My thumb hovered over the power button. No, not enough. They could track it even when it was off. They could have keyloggers, microphone access. They could have been listening to me retch into the toilet. They could have heard me whisper my father's name. I didn't think. I acted. A pure animal instinct for survival, for the protection of the child inside me, took over. I scooped the $84 in cash off the bedspread. I grabbed my driver's license. I might need an ID and the flimsy motel room key. I left everything else. The wallet with the tracker. I left open on the bed. A silent fuck you to whoever was watching. And my phone. My beautiful, smart, treacherous phone. I placed directly on top of it. I walked out of the motel room, dropped the key at the front desk, and didn't look back. I walked 2 blocks, then another, until I found a city dumpster behind a convenience store. I looked around. The street was empty. I took my phone and the wallet and threw them deep into the reeking darkness of the dumpster. I was untethered. No money, no communication, no home. Just $84, a pregnant belly, and the clothes I was wearing. I stood on the corner, the traffic rushing past, and the full weight of my isolation hit me. I had nowhere to go, no one to call. I was a ghost. And then, a wisp of a memory. My father, sitting in his worn leather armchair, swirling the ice in a glass of whiskey. I was a teenager, complaining about some high school drama. He had laughed, a low rumble. "You always need a sanctuary, Ilara. A place no one knows about, a place to think." It wasn't just a lesson, it was a specific memory. Years later, after his partner at the paper had been killed, a mugging gone wrong that my dad never ever believed was a mugging. He had become more careful, more secretive. "If anything ever happens to me, Ilara," he'd said, his voice quiet, his eyes hard. "If you're ever in real trouble, you go to our sanctuary. You don't call. You just go." Our sanctuary? It was a storage unit, a tiny 10 by 10 tin box in a rundown industrial park on the forgotten, rusty side of town. He'd rented it under his mother's maiden name. He'd taken me there once, years ago, to help him file, and we'd spent the afternoon laughing and sneezing from the dust on his old case files. I had $40 left after buying a bus pass and a bottle of water. I used the remaining cash for the bus fare. It was a long ride, transferring twice, moving from the gleaming glass towers of my old life to a land of cracked pavement, chain-link fences, and warehouses with broken windows. The storage facility was called Safe Haven. The irony was lost on no one. It was a grid of corrugated metal doors, baking under the afternoon sun. The manager, a man with a face like a dried-out sponge, barely looked up from his television when I gave him the unit number and the name. He didn't ask for ID. He just grunted. My father's old key, which I hadn't even realized was still on my keychain, slid into the rusty padlock. It stuck, and for a heart-stopping second, I thought it wouldn't turn. Then, a click. The heavy metal door groaned and shrieked as I rolled it up. The smell hit me first. Old paper, dust, and the faint, sweet scent of his pipe tobacco. It was my father. The unit was packed to the ceiling with banker's boxes, each meticulously labeled in his sharp, black handwriting. City Hall corruption, 1998. Waterfront deals, 2005. Bryson homicide, 2010. This was his life's work, his brain. Tucked in the back, behind a stack of yellowing newspapers, was a small, black, fireproof safe. My heart hammered. I knew the combination. It was my birthday. I spun the dial. Click, click, click. The handle turned. The heavy door swung open. I had expected cash. A small, desperate part of me had prayed for a stack of hundreds, a lifeline. But there was no money. There was a plastic-wrapped, brand-new burner phone, a thick manila folder, and a single white envelope with one word on it, Ilara. My fingers trembled as I picked up the envelope. I tore it open. It was a single page, filled with his familiar, aggressive script. It had been written 3 days before he died. My dearest Ilara, if you are reading this, it means I was right, and I am gone. And if you are here, it means you are in the kind of trouble I always feared. Listen to me. My heart attack was not natural. I am too stubborn to die so easily. I have been investigating, not for the paper, but for myself. It's about Liam. Ilara, I am so sorry. He is not who you think he is. He is not a financial consultant. He is a ghost. His entire identity is a fabrication. He is connected to them. Ellie. The same people who killed Robert, his partner, all those years ago. They are back. They are cleaning house. And I think I am on their list. Do not trust anyone, especially not your friend Chloe. I am out of time. I love you more than my own life. Be smarter than me. Be tougher than me. Use what I have left for you. Dad. I sank to the dusty floor, the letter clutched in my hand, my breath coming in ragged, painful sobs. He was murdered. My father was murdered, and I had married his killer. After a long time, I forced myself to move, to be tougher. I wiped my face on the sleeve of my shirt and reached for the manila folder. I opened it. It wasn't case files. It was a legal document, an insurance policy. My eyes scanned the first page, looking for the payout. My breath caught. $75,000. It wasn't a fortune, but it was survival. It was a new life. It was my father's last gift. Then I read the name of the insured. It wasn't Thomas Vance. It was Chloe Dubois. I read it again. It was a life insurance policy for $75,000 taken out by my father on the life of my best friend. The beneficiary was a shell corporation I'd never heard of, Aegis Charitable Trust, and the proof of payments, stapled to the back, showed quarterly premiums being paid not from my father's bank, but from an anonymous offshore account in the Cayman Islands. My confusion cleared, replaced by a sudden, ice-cold understanding. This wasn't a gift. This wasn't a lifeline. This was a breadcrumb. This was evidence. My father hadn't just been suspicious of Liam. He had been investigating Chloe. The $75,000 wasn't a safety net for me. It was a paper trail, a transaction, a link, my father's last investigation. I sat on the dusty concrete floor of the storage unit, the single bare bulb above humming, casting a weak yellow circle of light. The air was still and close, thick with the smell of old paper and the ghost of my father. I was no longer a grieving daughter or a betrayed wife. I was an investigator, and this was my first real clue. The Chloe policy. $75,000. Why I put the insurance document aside and turned back to the manila folder. Beneath where the policy had been, there was more. Not a thick stack, but a few, carefully chosen pages. Tucked in the very back was one of my father's spiral-bound notebooks, his brain. This must have been his active one, the one he was using when he died. I flipped it open. His handwriting, sharp and impatient, filled the pages. Most of it was case notes on things I didn't recognize, names and dates. But then, near the end, I saw her name. Chloe. My breath caught. It wasn't just her name. It was a ledger. My father had been tracking her. There were printouts from a financial investigation service, the kind only expensive PIs or journalists with deep pockets could access. He had run a full background and asset check on Chloe Dubois. I saw bank transfers, large ones, $10,000 here, $20,000 there, deposited into her account over the last 3 years, all from a shell company I'd never heard of, Sovereign Holdings, LLC. The dates of the deposits were chilling. One was a week after I got my job at Astrodata. Another was 3 days after I announced my engagement to Liam. The last one, a payment of $50,000, was 2 days after I told Chloe I was pregnant. My father's notes were scrawled in the margins. Sovereign, Dar offshore, untraceable. Same funding structure as Bryson Case. Payments are contractual. For what service? And then, his final terrifying deduction, Chloe Dubois, DOB matches, parentage matches, but Chloe was never at UCLA. Met Alara Orientation Week, planted check connection, who benefits from access to me, or E. My vision swam. I had to read it 3 times to understand. Chloe wasn't my college friend. My father, with his reporter's paranoia, had checked. She had never been enrolled. She had been inserted into my life, a handler, an operative, tasked with monitoring the daughter of a journalist who asked too many dangerous questions. Our entire friendship, 12 years of it, was a lie. A job. I looked back at the insurance policy, the $75,000, the offshore account, my father's letter. He is connected to them. Ellie. The same people who killed Robert. The pieces clicked into place with the cold, hard finality of a deadbolt. The $75,000 policy wasn't a retainer for Chloe. It was my father's proof against her. He found her secret offshore payments. He found the source. So, he set up his own. He created a new, clean, undeniable paper trail, this insurance policy linking Chloe to that same offshore world. He paid the premiums from an account he set up, mimicking their methods. He was creating a trap. He was building a case. And he'd made this policy the star witness. He'd bought it to prove a transaction, a connection, a conspiracy. And he'd used Chloe's life as the collateral. If she was a plant, then Liam wasn't a coincidence. He was the second operative, the one they sent in when the stakes got higher. I was the target. I had always been the target. But why, to get to my father? He was already dead. To monitor me, I was just a data analyst. Astrodata. The word pulsed in my brain. Astrodata Solutions. He made me feel like the most fascinating woman in the room. Liam's words. He told me my work at Astrodata was groundbreaking. Chloe, show Liam you're a power couple, she'd said. He'll respect you more. She was the one who pushed me to work late, to finish the project. The project. My algorithm. It wasn't just an algorithm. It was my life's work. A predictive model that could analyze petabytes of seemingly unrelated data consumer trends, weather patterns, geopolitical chatter, financial markets, and predict market movements with an accuracy rate I had only seen in my dreams. 94% in the last simulation. It was a tool that could make billions or topple economies. It was a weapon. I hadn't been hired at Astrodata by chance. I was recruited, placed. They didn't want a data scientist. They wanted me. They wanted my specific, unique expertise. They had put me in a cage and given me everything I needed to build them their weapon. And I had the full, monstrous scope of the plan unfurled in the dusty air. Step 1. Insert Chloe into my life. Monitor the journalist's daughter. Step 2. When the daughter develops a skill set far more valuable than her father's secrets. Pivot. Step 3. Place the daughter inside a custom-built corporate environment. Astrodata. Step 4. Send in the A-team. Liam. Seduce her. Marry her. Lock her down. Create the illusion of a perfect, stable life so she focuses on her work. Step 5. Let her build the billion-dollar algorithm. Step 6. Once the prize is complete, begin extraction. Get her pregnant. A natural, biological distraction. A vulnerability. It makes her emotional, unreliable. Step 7. Frame her, Use her best friend and her husband as the chief witnesses. Accuse her of the very crime they are committing, theft. Step 8. Discredit her. Fire her. Bankrupt her. Isolate her. Make her the crazy, vindictive, pregnant ex-wife. Who would ever believe her? Step 9. They walk away with the algorithm, the company, the billions. And I am left on the street, holding nothing but a baby and a restraining order, my father's laptop, Liam spilling coffee on it. It wasn't to destroy his old case files. It was to destroy any new files. The files he was building on Liam, on Chloe. My father hadn't died of a heart attack. He had gotten too close. He had discovered their plan, and they had eliminated him. I sat there, in the silence, my hand on my stomach. The baby kicked, a small, innocent flutter. They thought this baby was my weakness, the thing that would break me, distract me, make me easy to manage. I felt a cold, hard resolve settle into my bones, a resolve I recognized from my father. They were wrong. This baby wasn't my weakness. This baby was my witness. And this $75,000 policy wasn't just a paper trail. It was my inheritance. It was the first bullet in my gun. The $75,000 policy was a weapon, but a weapon I couldn't use yet. It was evidence, yes, but it wasn't cash, and I was still a pregnant woman with no money, no food, and no shelter, hiding in a tin box. My father had given me a sword, but I needed a shield. I needed to live. I looked at the burner phone. It was my only other tool. I turned it on. The screen glowed to life. A simple, anonymous welcome screen. No apps, no data. Just call and text. I went back to my father's notebook, the last one he'd used. I flipped past the damning notes on Chloe. The last few pages were just names and numbers, no context. Most seemed to be contacts for old cases. But one name was circled, twice, in his aggressive red ink. Ramirez. Next to it, not a phone number, but a string of digits, 7198, and a single cryptic phrase, ask her about the 98 water. It wasn't a phone number, but it was a key. I found the number for Ramirez in the contact list. I dialed, my hand shaking. This was a desperate, blind move. A woman answered on the second ring. Her voice was gravel. Yeah. Hello, I stammered, my voice sounding weak, thin. I'm trying to reach Mrs. Ramirez. You got her. Who's this? My name is... I'm Thomas Vance's daughter. There was a heavy, dead silence on the line. I thought she had hung up. Ma'am, I said, I'm here, she snapped. I'm thinking, Thomas is dead. I know. He left me your name. He left me a note. A note, she said, flatly, unconvinced. My eyes scanned the page. He told me to ask you about the 98 water. Another silence, but this one was different. It was sharp, attentive. Where are you, kid? She asked, her voice changing, dropping into a lower, more serious register. I don't know if I should say. Smart, she grunted. Good. You're already smarter than half the people I know. Okay, listen to me. Union Station, in 1 hour. Go to the Great Hall, sit on the benches facing the north window. Wear your hair up, if it's long. If you see me, I'll walk past you. I'll be holding a red legal folder. If I don't like what I see, I'm not stopping. If I stop, you follow me. Don't talk to me. Just follow. Got it. Yes, I said. 1 hour. The line clicked dead. I used the last of my bus pass to get downtown. I felt exposed, naked, sitting on the bench in the cavernous, echoing hall of the station. Every person who walked by felt like a threat. I put my hair up, my hands trembling. At exactly 1 hour, a woman walked past. She was in her late 60s, but she moved with a fast, clip-clopping energy. She was short, solid, with a salt and pepper bun pulled so tight it looked painful. She wore a sharp, practical pantsuit and held a bright red legal folder. She didn't look at me. She just walked past, her gaze fixed straight ahead, and then she stopped. She sighed, a deep, theatrical sound of annoyance, and turned on her heel. "Jesus Christ, kid," she muttered, standing in front of me. "You look like hell. And you're pregnant." "I am? Thomas, he always did find the messes, didn't he?" She tapped the red folder against her thigh. "Come on, we're walking. Don't talk until I say so." Her name was Maria Ramirez. She explained as we sat in a tiny, formica-tabled Cuban coffee shop in a strip mall miles away. A forensic accountant. She had been my father's numbers woman for 20 years. The 98 water, she said, sipping a scaldingly hot cortado. "Was the City Hall corruption case. Your dad got the words, I got the ledgers. We put 3 city councilmen in jail. I laid it all out. The firing, the restraining order, Liam, Chloe, my father's letter, and finally, the $75,000 insurance policy." She listened, her face impassive, her dark eyes missing nothing. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, she took the policy from my hands. Her fingers, stained with ink from a fountain pen, traced the name of the offshore holding company. "Sovereign Holdings," she whispered. She looked up at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something not fear, but a deep, cold anger. "These bastards!" "You know them." "I know the name. It's a ghost, a high-level cutout. Your father was flying too close to the sun. Alara, he wasn't just investigating your husband. He was investigating an organization, and they swatted him like a fly." She slid the papers back to me. "And now they've done this to you. They didn't just want you out of the way. They wanted to, what's the word, discredit, neutralize, and steal that code of yours." "I have nothing," I said, the words catching in my throat. "I have the evidence, but I'm going to be on the street in 2 days. I can't fight them." "No," she said, leaning forward. "You can't. Not like this. But your father, Thomas, was a paranoid son of a bitch, and thank God for that." "What do you mean? He didn't trust banks, kid, and he didn't trust his own family to be safe. After Robert was killed, he came to me. He'd just won a big settlement from a libel suit, about $50,000. He wanted to hide it, for you, but not in a way anyone could ever find." She took a napkin and a pen. She started drawing a diagram. "He set up a trust. I set it up for him. We buried it. We put it under 2 shell corporations, then a third, and tied it to a nonprofit endowment for, I don't know, bird watching. I think. It's clean. It's legal. And it's yours. It's not a fortune. Alara. With interest. It's maybe 70 grand. But it's a start. It's a war chest. For the second time in one day, my father had saved me." I wept. Right there in the coffee shop. A deep, shuddering release. Mrs. Ramirez just pushed the box of cheap napkins toward me. "Okay, that's enough of that. We've got work to do." That afternoon, she liquidated $10,000 of the trust. She rented a small, furnished, month-to-month apartment in a faceless building in a neighborhood I'd never been to. The lease was in the name of Jane Smith, with an ID she'd had in a drawer for a rainy day. We bought groceries, a laptop, a new burner phone, and a printer scanner. That night, for the first time in 48 hours, I was safe. The apartment was sterile, beige, and the most beautiful place I had ever seen. Mrs. Ramirez sat at the cheap kitchen table, the insurance policy spread out under a bright desk lamp. She had a magnifying glass and was making notes on a yellow legal pad. "This is good work," she muttered, mostly to herself. "Clean. Your dad set up the premium payments from a separate offshore account, a mirror of their own." "He was building a case," I said, my voice hoarse. "He was," she agreed. "He was creating an echo. He was proving they had a methods of payment, but he didn't know the whole story." What story? She pointed her pen at the account number for the shell company that had paid Chloe. Sovereign Holdings, LLC. Your father was right. This is the same funding structure as the Bryson case. But I've been looking at this name, this Sovereign, for 6 months. I've been retired, but I can't help myself. I kept pulling on the thread. She looked up at me, her face grim. This account, Ilara, it's not just corporate. It doesn't just fund corporate espionage. This same account, with this same routing number, has made $2 million dark money donations to the re-election campaign of Senator Marcus Freed, the man who sits on the Senate Oversight Committee for the entire financial services industry. The room went cold. This wasn't just Liam. It wasn't just Chloe. It wasn't even just Astra Data. We hadn't just stumbled onto corporate fraud. We had stumbled onto a political conspiracy, and we had just used their money to rent an apartment. The beige, sterile apartment became our world. We lived by the hum of the small refrigerator and the blue light of the laptop screen. 2 months passed, 2 months of cheap canned soup, stale coffee, and sleepless, strategy-filled nights. My body changed, the swell of my pregnancy becoming a heavy, unignorable presence. I was 7 months pregnant, and the baby and I were fugitives. Mrs. Ramirez. I had started to call her Maria in my head, though I'd never dared say it aloud, was my anchor. She was a general commanding an army of 2 from a Formica kitchen table. Our days were a meticulous, patient routine. By sunrise, she would be at the table, armed with a yellow legal pad and a red pen, her mind navigating the labyrinth of offshore accounts and shell corporations. She was the analog, the old-school bloodhound. At sunset, I took over. Ilara Vance is a ghost, Maria had declared on our first day. She is toxic. She is being hunted. Ilara Vance does not exist. It took her 3 days, through a network of contacts I was better off not knowing about, to create Jane Smith. Jane Smith was no one. She had a thin, unverifiable credit history, a social security number from a state she'd never visited, and a driver's license with a photo that looked like a blurred mugshot. She was perfect. As Jane Smith, with the laptop routed through 3 different continents via VPNs, I went back into my old life. I was the one who had designed the security architecture for Astra Data. I had built the walls, which meant I also knew where the hollow bricks were. I had left behind several developer backdoors, diagnostic tools that were invisible to any standard security sweep. They were my secret passages. I slipped past their firewalls. They had changed all the admin passwords, of course, but they hadn't scrubbed the debug logs. They hadn't purged the system's root memory. They were arrogant. They thought the threat was gone because they had escorted me from the building. My first target was Marcus Russo, my old boss. He was a man defined by a single, simple motive: greed. He was the weak link. I found his executive trading account, just as I suspected. He was liquidating. He wasn't dumping his shares in a single, panicked sale. He was smarter than that. He was selling in small, controlled blocks, a few thousand shares every day, funneled through an LLC in Delaware. He was quietly, methodically cashing out. He knew the company was a house of cards. He knew that once my algorithm was sold, Astra Data would be an empty shell. He was just another thief, grabbing what he could before the building burned down. While I hunted in the code, Maria hunted in the numbers. Got him, she grunted one evening, not looking up from her laptop. Who? I asked, rubbing my aching back. The husband, the consultant, Liam Vance. She spun the laptop toward me. It was a wire transfer confirmation. Your father was right. He's a ghost, but he's a ghost who gets paid. She had traced the payments from the Shanghai-based conglomerate, the one I'd always assumed was our biggest competitor. They weren't just a competitor. They were the buyer. And Liam wasn't just a rising star. He was a broker. He was the one selling my work, my mind, to the highest bidder. He was the middleman, the glorified salesman in the conspiracy. The last piece was Chloe. How had they framed me so perfectly? I pulled the server logs from the night of the breach. The logs were clear at 2:03 in the morning. The transfer was initiated from my workstation, using my credentials. It looked like an open and shut case. But I cross-referenced the server logs with the building's internal security logs, the physical keycard data. My keycard hadn't been used to enter the building that night, and then I saw it. The VPN access log. A remote user had logged into the Astra data network at 2:01 a.m. The user's IP address wasn't mine. It wasn't an offshore server. It was a residential address. I ran the address. My blood went cold. It was Chloe's apartment. She hadn't just been my friend. She hadn't just been a plant. She was the internal handler. She was the one who had access to my passwords, the one who knew I used the same lazy phrase for my home network and my work account. While Liam had been out on his business trips, brokering the sale, Chloe had been the one sitting at her computer, using my identity to create the perfect, undeniable evidence that would ruin me. I looked at all the pieces. Russo, the inside man cashing out. Liam, the broker selling the asset. Chloe, the operative handling the frame-up. They had the algorithm. They had their scapegoat. "Maria," I said, my voice thick, "why are they still tracking me?" She stopped writing. What if they won? Why plant the tracker? Why the restraining order? Why not just let me disappear? A broke, disgraced single mother. Maria put down her red pen. Her face, usually a mask of hardened practicality, softened with a look of pity. "Because, kid, you're not a threat. You're a loose end. A discredited witness is still a witness." The realization hit me with a physical force. They weren't just protecting their careers. They were protecting themselves from a murder investigation. My father's murder. They didn't just want to silence me. They wanted me gone. They were just waiting for the right moment. I went back to the laptop. My hands were shaking. I had to know. I pushed deeper into the network, past the files, past the logs, into the encrypted executive mail server. It was a fortress. It took me 36 hours of relentless, non-stop work, running decryption scripts until my eyes burned, until the baby felt like a stone in my belly. Then, a lock clicked open. I found a hidden archive, a message chain between Russo and an encrypted address I didn't recognize. But I recognized the signature. L. M. Leland Mitchell, Liam. The subject line was, "The E. Problem." I opened the last message, sent just 1 week before I was fired. "Russo, the board is nervous. She's 7 months pregnant. We can't have this blow up. L. M. Liam. It won't. The plan is sound. We proceed with the termination. The data theft charge will discredit her. The restraining order will isolate her. No one will believe a word she says. But you are right. She is a liability that must be managed. Russo, what does that mean? L. M. Liam. It means we need a permanent solution. The stress of the divorce, the firing. It's a tragedy, a postpartum complication, a grieving, unstable mother. It's clean. My team will handle the cleanup after she delivers." I stared at the last line. A bonus payment schedule. $100,000 to be paid upon confirmation of solution. The date of the scheduled payment was my due date. They weren't just going to kill me. They were waiting for me to give birth first. They were waiting for the baby, and then they were going to murder me. I held the printout of the email, the one about the permanent solution, until my fingers, white-knuckled, had crumpled the edges. They were going to kill me. They were going to wait for my baby to be born, and then they were going to murder me and call it a postpartum complication. "We go to the police," Maria said, her voice a low growl. "We take all of this, the policy, the bank transfers, this email. We hand it to the press. And they hand it to Senator Freed," I said, my voice hollow. "The man who owns them, the man who gets his campaigns funded by the same account that paid for my friend and my husband. No, we can't go to the police. The police work for them." "Then what? Ilara?" she demanded, her hands flat on the table. We sit here and wait for them to find us. You're 8 months pregnant. We are out of time. No, I said, a new, cold clarity settling over me. The fear was gone, burned away by a pure, white-hot rage. We don't wait. We use the one weapon we have that's better than their political connections. What's that your magic computer tricks? They're greed, I said. They're not a conspiracy. They're a business. And I'm about to give them a very, very bad review. It took a day to set the trap. Using my Jane Smith credentials and a dozen layers of encryption, I created a new, sterile email address. I drafted a message. I sent it to the public-facing acquisitions director of the Shanghai conglomerate, the one Maria had identified as Liam's buyer. The message was simple, and in perfect corporate-speak Mandarin, thanks to an online translator. To the director of acquisitions, you are in the process of being defrauded. Your pending 10-figure purchase of Project Chimera from Astra Data, brokered by Liam Vance, is for an incomplete and critically flawed build. Mr. Vance is not the developer. He is a third-party reseller. I am the creator. And Mr. Vance is selling you a lemon. Maria looked over my shoulder. A lemon. That's your big plan. Wait, I said. I attached a file. A single, small text file. This is a single module from the core code. The one they have contains a recursive error in the predictive modeling. It creates a data feedback loop that will corrupt your entire dataset within 90 days. It will look like a success until it collapses. Mr. Vance does not have the key to fix it. I do. My consultation fee is negotiable. It was a lie, of course. The code was perfect. But I had just created a harmless, complex-looking flaw. One only I would know how to fix. I had just planted the seed of doubt. I hit send. We didn't have to wait long. 24 hours. My back door into the Astra Data executive server lit up. The buyers weren't just nervous. They were in a full-blown panic. An emergency video call was initiated. Payment, the entire billion-dollar transfer, was immediately suspended, put in escrow pending a full technical review. Liam, Chloe, and Russo were trapped. I watched, a silent god in their machine, as their private encrypted messages turned from confident self-congratulation to pure animal panic. Liam to Russo. What the hell did you do? How did they know there is no flaw? Russo to Liam. This is on you, your security, your end. The buyers are threatening to sue. The senator is displeased. Liam to Chloe. It was you. You were the only other one with access. You must have made a copy. You're trying to cut your own deal. Chloe to Liam. I did what you said. I planted the data. I did everything. This is your fault. You were sloppy. You and your ego. They were eating each other alive. They had built their entire empire on a foundation of lies, and all it took was one tiny, well-placed whisper to make the entire thing collapse. The infighting was vicious, a flurry of accusations and threats. I watched for 2 days, mesmerized by the beautiful, predictable implosion of greedy, evil people. Then, on the 3rd day, a new message came, not to them, to me. I had been checking my old personal email account once a day. It was a risk, but I had to know if they were trying to serve me new legal papers, or if my family, what little I had tried to reach me. I used the VPN, scrubbed the logs, in and out in 30 seconds. Today, there was a new message. It wasn't spam. It wasn't a legal threat. It was an automated notification from my old cell phone provider, the one tied to the phone rotting in a landfill. Subject: You have one new voicemail. Transcript attached. My heart stopped. My old number should have been disconnected. But they must have kept it active, tapped, listening for me to make a mistake. They didn't realize Chloe would be the one to use it. I clicked. The automated text was cold, devoid of the emotion I knew must have been behind it. Transcript Alara. Oh, God. Alara, if you get this, please, please, it's me. It's Chloe. I'm so sorry. I never wanted this. It's Liam. It's all Liam. He's a monster. He made me. He forced me. He threatened me. He threatened my family. I have proof. Alara. Proof of everything. What he did to your father. The real bank accounts. I copied everything. I can fix this. I'm so scared. He thinks I'm the one who leaked the code. He's watching me. Please. You're the only one I can trust. Meet me. Just meet me. The old place. The library. Tomorrow at noon. I'll give you everything. We can make this right. Please, Alara. I'm so... The transcript ended. I stared at the words. He made me. I'm so sorry. I can fix this. It was a performance. A beautiful, desperate, tear-soaked performance aimed at a woman they thought was broken, pregnant, and stupid. It was a trap. I printed the email. I handed it to Maria. She read it, her face tightening. It's a trap. I know, I said, walking to the closet, pulling out the only coat I owned. You're not going, she stated. It wasn't a question. I am, I said, pulling on my shoes. It was difficult, bending over my 8-month pregnant belly. They think I'm desperate. They think I'm alone. They're counting on me to believe that my oldest friend still has a shred of good in her. They're giving me exactly what I want. They're giving you an execution. Alara. They're giving me an audience, I corrected. They've finally agreed to a meeting, and I'm going to make sure it's one they never, ever forget. I used the burner phone. I didn't call Chloe's number. I called my own old dead number, the one I knew they were listening to. I left a voicemail, pitching my voice to be exactly what they expected, a broken, terrified, pregnant woman, desperate to believe her best friend. Chloe, I whispered, adding a fake, hitched sob. I got your message. I don't know if I can trust you, but I'm alone. I'll be there. Noon. Please, please, be telling the truth. I hung up. It's a trap, Maria said, her arms crossed. She was standing by the window, watching the street. You are walking into a slaughter. No, Maria, I said, pulling the new laptop toward me. It's a stage, and I'm setting the scene. They want a meeting. They want a victim. I'm just making sure the right people are in the audience. We had less than 24 hours. We worked all night. Maria's part was an act of pure, bureaucratic malice. She sat at the kitchen table, a printer churning out page after page. You don't go to the cops when the cops are owned, she explained, her red pen flying as she organized the documents into 2 identical, thick packages. You go to the people who can't be bought, the ones who just want the numbers, the ones who hate money launderers more than they hate murderers. She was sending a package, via an anonymous overnight courier, to the regional offices of the Internal Revenue Service and the Securities and Exchange Commission. Inside was a feast, the printouts of Marcus Russo's illegal, systematic stock liquidation, the wire transfer logs from the Shanghai conglomerate to Liam's ghost accounts, and the star my father's $75,000 insurance policy for Chloe, a clean, undeniable link between my best friend and the offshore shell company, Sovereign Holdings. To top it all off, Maria wrote a cover letter, a concerned citizen memo, that didn't just point to the crime, but connected it directly to Senator Freed's campaign funding. You're not just giving them fraud, I observed, watching her seal the envelopes. I'm giving them a U.S. Senator, she said with a grim smile. The IRS will send a team, the SEC will send a team, and they'll trample each other to see who gets to plant the flag on that mountain of bodies first. My job was simpler. I made one call, to a name in my father's old contact book, a man my father had trained, who was now a senior investigative reporter at the Denver Post. He answered, Yeah, my name is Alara Vance. My father was Thomas Vance. A pause. I knew Tom. He was a good man, What's this about? My father used to talk about the '98 water case, I said, using the code phrase. He said you were the one who kept the files from being accidentally shredded. Another, longer pause. I'm listening. I'm going to be at the main branch of the public library tomorrow at noon. In the history stacks. I'm meeting a woman named Chloe Dubois. She's a key operative in a conspiracy that involves Astrodata, corporate espionage, and the murder of my father. And she's walking into a trap set by her own people. You're going to want to be there, and you're going to want to bring a camera. That's a hell of an accusation, Ms. Vance. It's a hell of a story, sir, I replied, and hung up. The next day, I dressed carefully. I was now 8 months pregnant, a massive, unignorable physical fact. I wore a thin, worn-out maternity dress. I looked pale, vulnerable, and exhausted. I was a perfect victim. I walked into the vast, silent hall of the library. The smell of old books and floor polish was overwhelming. I moved slowly, my hand on my back, playing the part of the pained, weary mother-to-be. She was there, in the history section, just like I'd said. Tucked away at a table between medieval Europe and the American West, Chloe. She looked terrible. Her hair was stringy, her eyes were red-rimmed and darting. It was a masterful performance. She was playing the part of the terrified victim, just as I was. "Ilara," she breathed, jumping up as I approached. "Oh, God, I didn't know if you'd come." I didn't speak. I just sat down, heavily, my hands on my belly. "You have to believe me," she whispered, leaning in, the panic in her voice almost convincing. "Liam is... he's not... he's dangerous. He's watching us, even now. He's here." "I know," I said. My voice was a dead, flat whisper. I'd seen him. He was in the glass-walled mezzanine above us, pretending to read a newspaper, a baseball cap pulled down low. He was the protection, in case I'd brought the police. He was the one who would silence me if I made a scene. Chloe's eyes welled with tears. I want to make it right. I have everything, the proof." "Everything he did to your dad. It's all here." She slid a black USB drive across the table. I looked at it. This was the moment, the handoff, the bait. This drive probably contained a virus, or more fake evidence, or nothing at all. It was just a prop. I put my hand on it. A flash. Bright, sudden, and professional. Chloe shrieked, a genuine sound of terror. "Ms. Dubois." A man's voice boomed, shattering the library's sacred silence. "Ms. Dubois. My name is David Kane, Denver Post. Care to comment on your relationship with Sovereign Holdings?" The journalist. He stepped out from behind a bookshelf, his camera flashing again, capturing Chloe's face, a perfect mask of pale, guilty horror, and in that exact, perfect, planned moment, everything happened at once. Up in the mezzanine, Liam saw the camera. He saw Chloe, frozen. He saw me, watching him. He knew, instantly, that this was a setup. He dropped the newspaper and his hand went to his pocket, for his phone. He was a second too late. His phone was already buzzing. And mine, the burner phone in my pocket, was buzzing too. Maria. She was watching the news. I didn't have to look at my phone. I just had to watch Liam. I saw him pull his phone out. I saw his face go from angry to confused, and then to a slack-jawed absolute terror that was more satisfying than any drug. He was watching a news alert, a live feed. He was watching federal agents, in dark blue jackets marked IRS and SEC, swarming the lobby of Astrodata Solutions. He was watching my old boss, Marcus Russo, being led out of the front doors in handcuffs, his face a mask of purple-red confusion. The trap had snapped. The journalist's camera was flashing, documenting a panicking Chloe who was babbling. I don't know." And Liam, above, saw it all. He saw the journalist. He saw the raid on his phone. He understood in one catastrophic second that we hadn't just ambushed Chloe, we had ambushed everyone. He didn't run to help her. He didn't come for me. He turned and he ran. A desperate, scrambling sprint for the exit. A rat fleeing a ship that was not only sinking, but on fire. I sat at the table. I didn't watch him go. I picked up the USB drive and I put it in my pocket. "Ilara, what's happening?" Chloe whimpered, finally turning to me, her fake tears replaced by real ones. I looked at my oldest friend, the woman who had been a sister to me, the woman who had planned my murder. "It's called discovery, Chloe," I said, my voice finally clear and strong. "And you're all out of time." He was predictable, a cornered animal, a man whose entire identity was built on money, would always run to his money. He wouldn't run to an airport. His fake passport was probably already flagged. He wouldn't run to an ally. He had none. He would run to the one place he still felt safe, the one place that held his liquid power. Maria and I had anticipated this. She had identified his private bank weeks ago, Alpine Reserve Trust, a discreet, old-money establishment in a marble building downtown, a place that prided itself on client privacy, which was a polite way of saying they didn't ask questions about shell corporations. Maria had made the call 2 hours ago, not to the bank, but to the federal task force. "He's going to run," she'd told the lead agent. "And he's going to run there. And you know," she'd added, a masterstroke of manipulation. "I'm worried about what he'll do when he's cornered. He's a violent man." So when I walked into the bank lobby, I wasn't alone. The bank was quiet, closed for system maintenance. But I had been let in. 2 federal agents, a man and a woman in quiet business suits, were standing near the tellerless counter, pretending to be bank employees. I was the bait, and I, at almost 9 months pregnant, was the most unassuming, powerful bait in the world. I just sat on a plush leather bench in the center of the marble hall, and I waited. I only had to wait 10 minutes. The glass doors burst open. Liam ran in, his hair wild, his suit jacket wrinkled. He didn't look like the polished, charming man I had married. He looked like the rat he was. He was holding his phone to his ear, probably screaming at his lawyer, when he skidded to a stop on the polished floor. He saw me. "You," he breathed. The word was a single, venomous puff of air. "Hello, Liam," I said, not moving from the bench. "You're trespassing," he hissed, looking around, his eyes darting to the employees. You did this. That stunt at the library. That was you." "It was," I said. "You stupid bitch," he snarled, taking a step toward me. "You're violating your restraining order. I can have you arrested." "Can you?" I asked, my voice echoing slightly in the vast, empty room. "I don't think you have that kind of influence anymore, Liam. Or should I call you Leland Mitchell? I hear the SEC is having a very hard time finding any assets under that name. Or your real one." His face went pale. The blood drained, leaving only a mask of pure reptilian rage. "You don't know anything," he said, but his voice was shaking. "I know everything," I said, finally standing up. It was an effort, my body heavy, but I stood, facing him. "I know about the algorithm. I know about the Shanghai deal. I know about the plan to sell it and leave Astrodata a hollow shell. I know about Marcus Russo's insider trading and Chloe's wire transfers. She's a liar. I know about your permanent solution." "Liam," I said, cutting him off. My voice was as cold and hard as the marble floor. "The email you sent to Russo, the postpartum complication you had planned for me, the $100,000 bonus, scheduled for my due date." He stopped. The last of his bluster evaporated. He was looking at a ghost. He was looking at a woman he had sentenced to death, who was standing in front of him, holding all the cards. "But your real mistake," I continued, "the one that started all of this, was a long time ago. Your first mistake was my father." He flinched. You were there, weren't you? You accidentally spilled coffee on his laptop because he was investigating you. He knew. He knew you were a fraud, and he knew you were connected to the people who'd killed his partner. You can't prove that, he spat. Oh, I can. That's the beautiful part. My father's last gift. He left me the proof. He left me the thread. I took a step closer. The two agents tensed, but I held up a hand, a tiny, almost invisible gesture. Not yet. He left me a $75,000 insurance policy, I said, my voice low and clear. The one he took out on Chloe's life. He paid for it with the same offshore methods you use. He created the very evidence the IRS needed to connect Chloe, to connect you, to connect Russo, all the way up to Senator Freed. That $75,000 policy. Liam. It wasn't big enough to make you rich, but it was big enough to be evidence. It was big enough to burn your entire world to the ground. That was it. The mention of the senator. The mention of the money. His mask of civilization shattered. He wasn't a broker, or a consultant, or a gentleman. He was a killer. You, he roared, and he lunged, not at the agents, not at the door, at me. His hands were out, aimed at my throat, at my belly. Federal agents, get down now. The room exploded. The two agents were on him in a second, tackling him to the ground with a sickening, heavy thud. He fought, but it was useless. A third agent, the one who had been at the security desk, was already on top of him, pulling his arms behind his back, cuffing him. It was over. Chloe and Russo had been arrested at the library and the office, in the public chaos of their own failure. Liam's arrest was here, in the cold, silent tomb of his own greed. They hauled him to his feet, a disheveled, pathetic monster. He was screaming, his face purple, his eyes locked on me. "You'll never prove it," he shrieked, the words echoing. "You have nothing. She's a liar. She's a thief. You'll never ever prove what I did." I just watched him. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, my hand on my belly. And as the agents dragged him, struggling and cursing, toward the glass doors, a sudden electric pain shot through me. It wasn't fear. It wasn't stress. It was a sharp, grounding, biological reality. My breath hitched. My hand tightened on the bench. A low, deep, muscular wave crested and seized my entire body. The female agent, the one who had been at the counter, saw my face. She stopped. "Ms. Vance, are you okay?" I looked at her, my eyes wide, a slow smile spreading across my face even as I winced. I was breathing hard. "He's wrong," I panted. "I don't have to prove it. They just did." I gripped the bench, and I think I'm in labor. I gave birth 7 hours later. I was alone, in a clean, bright hospital room, with two very polite federal agents sitting outside my door, not as jailers, but as a protective detail. The news was on mute in the corner. I saw their faces flash across the screen. Liam, Chloe, Russo, even Senator Freed, his face a mask of no comment. The lawyers, paid for by Maria from my father's trust, were already filing the injunctions. The algorithm, my algorithm, would be returned to its creator. I was a free woman, and a very, very wealthy one. My daughter was asleep in a small plastic bassinet next to the bed. I picked her up. She was so small, so warm. I held her, my heart aching with a pain and a love I had never known, and walked to the window, looking out over the Denver skyline. My father's legacy. He had left me money. Yes, but that wasn't what had saved us. He had left me his methods. He had left me his stubbornness. He had left me the truth, and it had set us free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know, where are you listening from? Please let me know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, like this video, and show your support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.